It's like going through some sort of dimensional portal when I come off that busy dual carriageway and walk into this tunnel of trees. And in the summertime, it literally is a tunnel. And it's beautiful to see the blossom, isn't it? It really is. And so now when I walk up here, there's whites and pinks and greens, and all the birds are in full song, and beautiful auspicious times. So some of you are aware that I will have my next therapy session on the 10th of April, this coming Thursday. And first off the bat, I'm going to be speaking about a form that I was given to fill in. And this form was to see how dissociated, if at all, I was. Well, of course, I'm very much the opposite of being dissociated. I'm very associated. I'm very present. But the questions, there were about 30 questions, and it was like you have a 1 to 10, whereby you tick the number which is relevant to you. And one of the questions was, some people hear voices in their head. How true is this for you? And so I had to write, something about that, which I'm going to be speaking to the therapist about. Because we really need to discern what that form means by voices in the head. Now, first of all, what I'm going to say is, are you aware, Miss Psychologist, that lots of people do not have internal monologue? Some people have internal monologue, some people have internal dialogue. Some people can have lots of voices, advising on this, that and the other. And I've often said to you that there are many spirits dwelling within this earth experience. And I think I was given this form because I mentioned having Yahweh and Jesus speak to me and being offered a certain nefarious option. Literally, do I want to continue living? Do you really want to continue living in this hell? And I'm like, well, there's no fucking difference really, is there, between this hell I'm living at this moment in time and the hell that you're offering. So I said, I might as well stay here. At least this one isn't for eternity. So when you say things like that, in their limited experience and only being trained in the clinical facets of these things, of course they're going to be thinking, oh, might be bordering schizophrenic or something like that. I've often wondered, and I've often listened to people watch videos speaking about schizophrenics and, the voices that they hear in their heads and this, that and the other. And I'm like, are they really ill? Or are they just more connected, more on the borderline of the spiritual realm? Because we can read hundreds of thousands, millions of books on the spiritual realm. Spirits talking to people and spirits existing here and there. And so this isn't something that we should dismiss because people have been speaking about it forever. So I'm going to say to this therapist, well, the voices that I've had in my head weren't voices of unknown entities. They weren't exactly somebody else's voice. And so I was speaking to a friend about this, and she mentioned, well, maybe what they're asking is if it is a voice that you don't recognise. And that's a very good point. It's a very good point, because if you've got voices telling you to do this and telling you to do that you don't recognise, then I've never experienced that. And of course that is going to be very disturbing. And if these voices are telling you to do nefarious things, then you might very well envision these voices to be demons. But fortunately I've not had that. But I have been spoken to intuitively, actual voices. Like if you're thinking, well, I've had these thoughts, like on the occasion that Jesus was telling me, if I want to know what unconditional love is, I have to go through him. And I'm like, wow, what the fuck? And then the one with Yahweh or Jehovah chastising me for 3.5 hours about my transgressions against love. So I'm going to ask, what does she mean? What does their institution mean? And can she clarify? Because it's very important that I get things clarified, and so she's not writing down he's got voices in his head, because that potentially could be very dangerous. So I'm going to make it absolutely clear that the voices in my head is only exactly the same as my internal dialogue. And we can have an internal dialogue, and we can have a monologue. If you've got like, shall I go to the gym? Oh no, I can't be fucking bothered to go to the gym. Oh, go on, just get it over with. Oh, fuck it. And all this stuff, Lots of people don't have that. But you see, if you don't have that dialogue, how can you debate? How can you really decide? How can you know that you are being autonomous? Because if you don't have the dialogue which weighs up the pros and cons, well, you're just like an automaton then. If you just get one voice, go to the gym, Mom, go to the gym, this, that and the other, it's kind of like, well, do you get a choice about it? Or do these voices just tell you to go and do this and tell you to go and do that? Lots of people, they don't even have the monologue. And so I've watched videos and people are saying, well, how do you know how to do stuff? It's kind of like, well, you just do it. You just do it. Well, that's what a radio controlled toy does, isn't it? It just does it because it's not aware of the signal which is controlling it. So you've got to ask the question, well, who's controlling these drones? And this is why we've got NPCs, because they don't actually make decisions about what they're going to do. They don't actually weigh the pros and cons up. They don't actually say, well, would that be a good thing? And what would happen if this happened? What would happen if that happened? And all these different sorts of things. That's why there's a great difference of consciousness. And that's why some people seemingly are vastly more intelligent, because they do work things out like that. Whereas the drones, you just tell them something and they just do it. So that's curious, and I want to ask her, is this a standard form that you give everybody, or did you give me this because I told you about Yahweh and Jesus speaking to me? And if she's a bit vague about that, I'm going to say, well, is it a secret? Are you trying to trick me? Are these sessions for my benefit or what? So why don't you want to explain the clarity of your actions here? In any case, I filled this form in, and I attached, I put a ring around certain questions, and then I transferred those onto another page, and I've put an explanation there, and I'm going to tell her, well, actually, I'm going to write on this form before I give it to her. See my handwritten attachments pertaining to these questions. So if anybody doesn't find those, then it's kind of like, well, what's happened to them then? Yeah. So in my life, there has been these occasions where I've been spoken to in a spiritual way, and they're very, very profound, and many people have had these sorts of religious experiences and things like that. And on one occasion, I was about to make a big decision, and the birds were singing, and it was as clear as day that what the birds were saying. The birds were saying, "Don't be a fool, Aaron. Don't be a fool, Aaron." And I'm like, what the fuck? The birds, they're actually singing that. And then not only were the regular birds singing it, but then there was a cockerel singing it as I was walking further past. And I'm like, what really is going on here? And it's not lunacy, people, because when you get into a spiritual realm, when your consciousness opens, many things like this happen. So I was speaking to a friend of mine who said that when she was feeling, I don't know, very anxious, she on occasion would consider that the radio or the television were playing songs which were for her, from her deceased father. Particularly like on the radio, a song would come on and it would be a message from her father, and it would be like, don't worry, be happy, or something like that. And it was very, powerful and profound. And then she started to think, well, am I a little bit crazy, or what's going on here? And I said, well, no, because I've never suffered from these levels of anxiety to the degree where it goes on and on and on. Of course we all have anxiety at times in our life, but when it becomes an issue and you're with it for several years, and you need medication to alleviate those symptoms. I've never had that, but I have on many occasions had this intuitive voice in my head telling me, what to do. And it's very similar to the intuitive voice that you have when you take mushrooms. People always say, the mushrooms told me this, and the mushrooms told me that, because it most certainly is. Albeit there's not a mushroom voice, it's just your thoughts in your head, but they're coming from either an external source, or they're coming from deep within our unconscious, and it's like your conscience is speaking to you, or your higher self is speaking to you, and this portal generally is blocked, so you need these mushrooms to open that portal, so then these entities can speak to you, and this is the thing about meditation, because when we meditate we get into a very tranquil state of consciousness, and we step outside of the egoic thoughts, and then we can actually hear the higher self. We can hear and communicate with another entity, which of course is us. We've got at least two entities. One is the higher self, the other one is the ego. Then of course we've got another one, which is the conscience. You see, when ego was working out the human mind, he came up with this the id, the ego, and the superego. And the id, it just means it in German, is the primal facet of our brain, the reptilian brain, the instinctive brain, which controls the general survival facets, eating and copulating and protecting ourselves and just going to take whatever the body needs. Well, that's the id, and the ego is the sensible facet of whether, well, should we go over there? Should I attack this animal now? It looks like it's potentially dangerous. The intelligent part, not just like the caveman. And then there's the super ego, which is the conscience. And the conscience says, nah, you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't have done that. And then you need to reflect on that and work stuff out. So that was Freud's gift to humanity. And so obviously there's a voice concerned with the superego, which is the conscience, reflecting upon our actions. So there has to be at least two entities. And I just wonder how many people, when it is said that they don't have an internal dialogue, well, how does their conscience work if they can't actually debate in their mind's eye, oh my goodness, I wish I'd never, said this to that person, now all this has happened, well, you should say you're sorry, yeah, but if I say I'm sorry, then maybe I'll appear to be weak, and you've got this dialogue, you see. And so there's so many things that we just don't really comprehend, and it's so diverse, and we're all different, and how can we be so different? That's the thing, how can we be so different? But just getting back to when we can hear songs, and it's like the song, it's like the cosmos or God or spirit is talking to us via that portal, and that song is just for us. And then when I'm listening to birds are very, very powerful for me. I just go straight into some sort of DMT, psilocybin dream when I'm listening to the birds, because that is the natural resonance of the earth. Those birds, that song, that vibration's been around for eternity. And apparently, and I've listened to this myself, if you listen to the sound of planets on the NASA site, you've got different sounds, different vibrations, which have been monitored with little modules, space modules flying by, Cassini and those sort of things. And some of the planets really screech like they're evil, and planet Earth sings like a cacophony of bird song, and it's gentle and it's beautiful, and it's very, very befitting. So when you hear the screeching of Saturn, which is said to be evil, and that's where the origin of evil comes from, and Saturn is controlling planet Earth, and all different sorts of stuff going on in mythology and that. So the question is then, people, how many of you have had this level of thought where, I don't know, maybe a dog's talking to you, or maybe you're walking down the street and a dog's barking at you and you think it means something. What's actually going on there? It's a phenomenon. What really is going on there? Because when I've had these things, they are really, really cause for contemplation. You just ask yourself, wow, this world, this consciousness, this mind, it really is beyond comprehension. And so the one more thing just before I go into the gym. There's this syndrome called Charles Bonnet syndrome, and it was coined by this French guy, Charles Bonnet, and he was a psychiatrist, I believe, and dealing with his patients, he often would observe that his patients were seeing entities, people. And there's a classic story in relation to this, whereby this psychiatrist was visiting this elderly woman in a care home in the 1800s, I think, like that, big old care homes like Bethlehem, the institution where we get the term Bedlam, always Bedlam, it's chaotic, or that was called Bethlehem, that institution. And it was built around about 1300. And so big institutions like that, and one particular patient within this institution would say, oh, look at all those beautiful dresses and all those people, and she was seeing people coming down the stairs, women in their beautiful finery, all their gowns, holding their sun umbrellas, and the gentlemen and all that sort of thing. I guess it was in that period, late 1800s, so they'd all be wearing that garb if they're very well to do, but she could see see apparitions or images, very clear to her, and she would comment on the colours and all the pomp of it. So how many of you have had experiences like this, and what was happening in your lives? Were you really stressed at this time, or were you really in touch with yourself? Were you really meditating every day and opening up the portals to all different sorts of stuff?